Rossland Museum and Discovery Center. As part of the Tech Rossland Mountain Film Festival and sponsored by the GOAT FM, we have Tara House, also known as Scorpion Queen, here to speak about her experience on the Pacific Crest Trail, and followed by a foreign film, Sedna, which tells the story of the Inuit goddess of the sea and the hunt. After the film, we're going to draw some door prizes courtesy of the museum and Curiosity Clothing and Powder Hound. And we'd also like to thank the sponsor, festival sponsor Tech, for making this weekend happen. So thanks to Tara for helping to organize this and for sharing a little bit about her adventure.
Thanks, Leah. So if you guys didn't see, the door prizes were just right at the beginning when you came in there. And Jeff, there was another PowerPoint there, if you can pull that up for me. And you'll have to excuse us, Jeff's going to help me out with the clicking, and you know how that goes sometimes. The presentation, I'm about 35 minutes plus Q&A, so if kids get antsy and you need to escape, there's no offense given if you have to leave. Yeah. Thank you. Oh no. Volunteers.
Shift F5.
We good? Thanks, Jeff. So, I hiked the Pacific Crest Trail this year. My goal was to thru hike the trail. The trail is about 2,650 miles long. It starts at the US-Mexico border and ends in Manning Park. Unfortunately, and most of you guys know this here, a little spoiler alert, I did not complete the trail. I did get sick. However, I did complete 1,700 miles of it, which equals all of California. So California is about 1,700 miles, Oregon's about 450, and Washington's about 500. And so when I got back, oh no. When I got back, everybody asked me, the big question is, how was it? And I don't know, I could never answer that question. It was really difficult. But how it was this. So that's myself, and I was known as Scorpia. The person beside me is Firefox. Her and I hiked for quite a bit together. And the third woman there is Patches. And so these are just nicknames that you're basically given on the trail through some type of story, and I'll get into why I'm the Scorpion Queen in a few minutes here. Firefox got her name when she hiked the Appalachian Trail, and Patches got hers because her gear kept falling apart on her and having to duct tape things together and whatnot. But that is, that's what the trail was about, was meeting new people and having some fun. We just discovered a blackberry bush coming into Sayed Valley there. It was blackberry season, and we were gorging on blackberries coming into town. And for anyone who's done the backcountry stuff, you know fresh berries are always a lovely treat to include in your diet. So that is sort of what the trail was to me in a nutshell. I'm not going to talk too much about logistics, but definitely if you're interested in doing this trail, I can talk a little bit more about that, on the side if you want to touch base with me. I did a lot of my own dehydrating and mailing my food out to myself, so I created about 20 boxes or so, and my husband Adam mailed them out for me, went across the border and mailed them all out for me as the trail went on. Gear, again, gear, it's not a huge difference whether you're going to hike for 3.5 months or you're going to hike a weekend. I do need to give a couple shout outs though. The first is to Gregory Backpacks. I absolutely love my Diva. I contacted them and they hooked me up with the 2015 Diva for the trail, so that was fantastic. And you might have seen the tent out front and my wonderful Thermarest Neo Air. Powder Hound gave me a huge hand in selecting this gear. Vicky, who's in the audience right now, is going to kill me for pointing her out. Her and I hiked the Canal Heritage last year, and we used that tent that was out there. So the two of us were in that tent all summer, or last summer. And then I used it all summer this summer, and definitely that's the Fly Creek Big Agnes, which I can give 2 thumbs up to that. It held up quite a bit. And the biggest gear change I made was actually my stove. I'm sure a lot of people in here are familiar with the Whisper Light. I started out with the Whisper Light, which I would recommend if you're hiking with 2 or more people, but it just became kind of a pain in the butt. And so I ended up switching to a standard canister stove after that, so saving me quite a bit of weight and space in there. So that was about the biggest change I'd made. You can definitely learn a lot about the food, and I'd have recommendations for anyone interested in doing this trail at another date. But I'll move on from there and get into my very first day, April 27th. Adam dropped me off down at Campo, California. That's the monument. That is the border right behind me there, the US-Mexico border. It was definitely difficult, obviously saying goodbye to my husband and my dog earlier on for the full summer, thinking I was going to be gone for over 5 months. But I just kind of kept on going. and happened to meet up with a woman at the beginning named Light Switch, and her and I hiked the first day together. Made it 15 miles. I was carrying about 8 liters of water at that point. It was hot. And keep clicking there. Just really enjoyed, you know, as everyone does on their first day of the trip, taking tons of photos of everything that's new and exciting. So that was really great. One thing that I learned that was really surprising to me was that whole concept of the illegal immigrants coming into the U.S. We all know about it, but I wasn't aware really of how much it would be in my face. And so there were these warning signs about death, and when Adam dropped me off at the border, we actually took a slightly wrong turn up one of the dirt roads, and we turned around, and you know, within a span of 5 minutes of doing that little turnaround, a U.S. border guard had actually drove up to us to see who we were and what we were doing. People reported border guards checking their identities and permits just to make sure they're actual hikers. So it was really interesting being front and center to that experience, especially at night with the helicopters flying around and checking things out for the first few days. Things kind of just moseyed on throughout the trip. Settled into my own little routine. This was a couple, Kevin and Sabrina, that I met on the second day. In those first few days, I had a chance to see 2 gopher snakes, a rosy boa, which Kevin is holding over there, which I found out later that the rosy boa is pretty elusive, so it's kind of cool to see that, and scorpions. I was fully aware of rattlesnakes in Southern California. I was not aware of scorpions. So the 4th morning, I woke up and I was packing up my tent, and it turned out that that little guy there was sleeping underneath my tent the whole night. So I packed up my tent, and it didn't bother me, didn't sting me or anything, and they dubbed me the Scorpion Queen, which we kind of just shortened down to Scorpia. So I am Scorpia, and I became Scorpia for the rest of that trip. And so then section A, we just, it's about 100 miles long. I hiked with Sabrina and Obi-Wan there for the first 100 miles. And again, just really enjoying lots of the pretty flowers and wildlife. That is Eagle Rock, just a very iconic spot on the trail. I'm sure you can tell where it gets its name from. It's really neat too. On the PCT, you can look back and see where you've come. You might have heard of the Appalachian Trail. I mentioned that it's out on the East Coast, but it's known as the Green Tunnel, so you just can't really see very far. Whereas the PCT, you turn around, you get to see wherever you come from. Water. We all know there's a drought in California. We all know they've been running a drought for a few years now. It was, again, really interesting to see that firsthand. You know, springs that are typically running just weren't running. And so a lot of my sources came from these horse-type troughs. And I'll talk about water filtration in a little bit here. I just sort of broken out the trail into some of the highlights there. So the San Jacintos are really beautiful. We also experienced snow in Southern California in May, which was quite rare. So that photo there is of Phil, the far end, Hufflepuff, myself, and Papa Kiwi. All 3 of them did complete the trail. And just sort of, it was neat, you know, you're walking around, you're basically alone all day, or you know, just hiking with one other person, you get to a water source and you know, there's 15 or 20 people there. So it was really kind of neat to see that whole concept of gathering around the water. And got to experience trail magic. So trail magic are when these wonderful people called trail angels volunteer their time, money, resources to helping out hikers. And it can be everything from picking up hitchhikers to taking them into town to hiking, to supplying us with cold pop underneath the bridge after a really, really long hot stretch. So I had a chance to meet Trail Angel Kay, who was responsible for this particular cache, and helped her bring out some pop and coolers. And then she went to her car and pulled out some cold fried chicken, vegetables, and fruit, watermelon, that kind of thing. So we spread it out on her car, and a few of us that were there got to dig in. So that was pretty fantastic, and happened throughout the whole trail. It's pretty amazing. And just, yeah, the end of section B there, heading into section C. So then we get into the San Bernardino Forest. Oh, California king snake, I got to see one of those. Just a typical camping area, or I shouldn't say typical, this was a lovely camping area, the Whitewater Preserve. We had some water right there, it was great. So I'm just going to hold up there, Jack. So the cool thing, or the frustrating thing that a lot of people found, you either kind of got into the groove or it really drove you nuts. This trail is called the Pacific Crest Scenic Trail, National Scenic Trail. And so what would happen is you get to this area and you'd be looking over and you're going, oh, that's where I need to go. But this trail would go down the valley, and I don't know if you can see the trail, but it's winding up here, and it goes back in and back over. And so a lot of people got really frustrated with it because, you know, like I said, there would be much straighter line that we could take, But what else are we going to do all day but hike? So you just kind of got into the groove and enjoyed it. Just another photo, you just have to enjoy the scenery. So, another example of trail magic. There's no roads very close to this spot here. People lugged up a dumpster and a couch for hikers, and that dumpster is full of candy and pop and all sorts of little goodies, and they just put it there. So, nice little surprise as you come around the forest. Just carrying on, just hitting around the 300-mile mark now from Big Bear to Wrightwood. Yeah, so the far left corner there is Coppertone's truck. Coppertone is a very unique individual. He is a nudist Christian priest. And loves hiking, loves long distance hikers, and so what he's done is he converted a little truck and follows the herd and gives them root beer floats. Unfortunately, I did not get a root beer float that day, but it was still nice to have chairs to sit on. And this is just starting to head into the Mojave Desert. There's actually a dam here that we have to walk across. Again, just highlighting the drought in the area. It was really interesting to walk across this dam that's completely and utterly dry. So that is really cool. Mount Baden-Powell was just outside of Wrightwood, and that's sort of a typical view of what you'd see when you come into town. Just dirty hikers hung around a grocery store eating watermelon when it was hot, that kind of thing. And this is Unicorn and Charlie. Charlie's the dog. A lot of people ask me about dogs on the trail, if I consider bringing my dog Shasta. I have some strong opinions on that. I don't think the trail is meant for dogs, especially in Southern California, unless you have a hot weather dog. My particular dog, being from up north, would not have survived in the south, and there were some huskies and shepherds out there that really, really hurt. However, Charlie was small enough that Unicorn could carry him on her back. So when Charlie got too tired, she could just plop him on. Those two also did finish the trail as well. Rusty and Nimble, just some people that I hiked up for quite a while there as well, outside of Wrightwood, just at the Mount Baden-Powell trailhead. It was Nimble's birthday, and so Rusty packed out a birthday cake from Wrightwood and had a little birthday cake, a little Boston cream birthday cake on the trail. But it was really cold. Once again, this is supposed to be Southern California. I wasn't supposed to need my puppy. People were being, recommended, don't carry your cold weather stuff in Southern California. I'm really glad I carried my cold weather stuff. Because when we got to the top, it was pretty much a whiteout there. It was a lovely, lovely fog. Carrying on through the desert, Patches there and I. Poodle Dogbush. Has anybody heard of Poodle Dogbush? I was unfamiliar with Poodle Dogbush until we started the trail, and that is basically similar to like a poison ivy or poison oak. And so it gets on your skin and just causes these really horrible blistering rashes. Really, really prevalent all along the trail, especially in burn areas. They like to grow in burn areas. So some sections were completely overgrown. Sometimes they closed sections because it was just so overgrown you couldn't get through it. We were pretty lucky. We got through all right. I finally got to get my root beer float with Coppertone. So that's Coppertone and I with my root beer float. Any Star Trek nerds in the room? Do you recognize where that is, Dimitri?
I do, yeah.
So this is Vasquez Rocks, and that's fine, I can see them. So it's Vasquez Rocks. They've filmed a lot of westerns and a whole bunch of Star Trek episodes there. And then my mom also came down, so that's myself and my mom. She flew down from Ontario and spent 2 weeks kind of driving around, Southern California there, taking us hikers into town and bringing me into hotel rooms and feeding me and giving me beer. It was wonderful. So now we're going to enter into the Mojave. The Mojave is very hot. The Mojave is very exposed, and there's not a lot of water. So most people gather at this little place called Hikertown, which is where that tree is there. And Hikertown is a really unique, weird little spot, really hard to describe. Sort of a town, sort of a business, sort of a hostel, sort of just weird. But it was a great place because you got a chance to rest, fill up your water before heading out on a 24-mile waterless stretch into this very, very flat area where you can see there's not a lot of cover. The worst part about leaving this section is that you're actually walking along and beside the aqueduct the whole time. So I'm walking right beside that wonderful blue strip there, but it is down these steep, steep banks that you might be able to get into, but you sure aren't getting out of. And then the aqueduct, goes underground and it's paved, and so you're just walking on top of the water, literally, while you've got, however many liters on your back. But it was still really neat. So a lot of people do the night hike out of Hiker Town just to help cut down on the amount of water you need. Obviously, it's a lot cooler at night. I've done a little bit of night hiking up to this point, just for that reason, trying to avoid some of the heat. I don't like night hiking. It's scary. You're walking around and you see eyes in the forest, and you know they're deer, but you always wonder, are they deer? And California is known for their cougar population, so yeah, it was really freaky. But this particular night hike was wonderful because there was a group of like 8 or 10 of us that just, sang and danced the whole way down. And it really for me, it really messes me up being up that late. I get up early in the morning anyway, so it was really, really weird. But like I said, it was great to be with that group for that one night. So we're still in the desert because the desert goes on forever. Southern California never ends. And yeah, just kind of walking through the wind farms there. At one point, Firefox and I are hiking together, and we finally realized that way off in the distance, that really far, the blue hazy side, you realize that those are the Sierras that you're starting to see. So that's a huge mental boost when you've been in this flat brush for so long to actually see the big, big mountains with a little bit of snow in the distance. And, I was just gonna, thanks. And just in examples, this is Coppertone's truck, yet again. This snapshot of people here is probably about a 2-hour window of people that came through. The trail was really not as isolated as I thought it would be. I think most of us expect to be kind of hiking alone when you're going out for a backpack, especially when you're on your own. But there was a lot of people, and most of that was due to the whole wild phenomenon. There was the book and the movie that came out this year. So in the previous years, there's probably around 400 to 500 through hiking permits that were issued, compared to 1,500 this year.
Oh, wow.
So there was a lot of people on the trail, but luckily all the towns and all the trail angels really held up and still were able to help us out quite a bit. And that's Moo and Moonshine there on the far side. Okay, so Kennedy Meadows, the big, like I said, it's a huge marker to get to Kennedy Meadows. It's 700 miles of the desert, and this is the official end to the desert. So you're starting to get a little bit more mountainous range. You're coming around a corner, and you get into a river, which is the biggest body of water we've seen in months. And then Kennedy Meadows is this kind of little town. I don't even know if it's a town officially. They've got some dirt roads. There's a couple of small businesses. This is an outpost that accepts hiker mail. So I mailed myself my bear canister, which you might have seen at the front there, with all my food. So you're kind of walking in. You're beat because you've had 2 months, 700 miles of desert heat, craziness. And this entire patio just erupts in cheers and applause. Because all the time. And it's a pretty cool feeling to experience that. I was just so exhausted. I wanted to cry. Like, I really wanted to just cry when I got there, but I just physically couldn't at that point. And then, like I said, I mailed myself most of my food. So this is one of my bigger carries. And this was an example of what I mailed myself. Can you just click one more? Thanks. And I just had a note in my journal. Like I said, it was a pretty emotional day to get in there for me. And Andrew and Leah, who did the little winning here for us, they sent me a card and a bag of cheesies. Well, except I think they ate the second bag of cheesies. They only sent me 1 bag of cheesies. But yeah, it was really interesting. So I had to fit 12 days of food into my bear canister because I opted when I left Kennedy Meadows to try to make a 12-day stretch to Vermilion Valley Resort. Just because I wanted to. There was a couple resupply options in between where I could have stopped and shortened that down a little bit. I just thought it would be really cool to hike through the Sierras as much as possible without stopping. But it was really, really heavy. And quite frankly, I just couldn't fit enough calories in the bag, so I was tired, but it was still really neat to actually do that full stretch. And so, we get to enter the Sierras. One of the most exciting signs I saw at the South Sierra Wilderness. And just again, the terrain changing. And heading up to Mount Whitney. So Mount Whitney is a day hike. Mount Whitney is the highest mountain in the lower 48 there at 14,500 feet, which is just over 4,100 meters. A lot of PCT hikers do it. You can just kind of drop your pack and do it as a day hike. And so Firefox and I took that challenge on, and that's the top. One thing that really struck me, I don't know if it struck you, is how brown that image is. Usually those are all snow-capped mountains, but still gorgeous nonetheless. And then of course we had to hop in Guitar Lake on the way down. I did my best to hop into as many lakes as I could. And so that was sort of our day for Mount Whitney. And then the next, sorry, that was okay, Jeff. So then the next point is Forester Pass. If you can just hold off there for 1 second. Forester Pass is the highest point officially on the trail. I don't have a little pointy thing here, but you're walking up and the trail just kind of winds back over to the right there. And I'm looking at that wall and I have to get over it. Does anybody know where you go over on that trail? Any concept? The far left notch there. Oh, yeah. Good. There we go. Yeah. Yes. So that is Forester Pass, and you're looking at it trying to figure out how you get up it. And I swear, I was walking across this whole expanse trying to figure out where I went. And it wasn't until I was right on top of it that I saw the trail finally. Those switchbacks built into the side. It's a pretty incredible trail building, and even more incredible, I think, the original, settlers that came across that pass, and what were they thinking? I don't know. So I got up to the top, 13,200 feet. Like I said, that's the highest point on the PCT. And then, of course, some obligatory views from the top. And like I said, typically these are all snow-capped mountains. Even Forester Pass itself, there have been seasons where, when it's a high snowpack, people are going up that. You're needing ice axe and crampons to get through it. That's one thing about the low snowpack for me this year, is for all of us this year, it was quite a bit easier to get through all these passes. And that was typically our day. We hike up a pass, get to relax and enjoy the scenery, and then you hike back down the pass, hopefully jump in a lake at some point. Yeah, carrying on into mile 800, and the League of Extraordinary Women. We're all just solo female hikers out there. So starting from the far left is Molly, who has also hiked the Appalachian Trail. We have Color Wheel, myself, Skeeterbait, and Firefox, of course. So she was, mosquitoes really liked her. And so, so the group of us just kind of hike together and, catch up in the evenings to have fires, yay! So Color Wheel, Nimble, and Rusty there. And just another photo again in the evenings. There we go. That's Skeeterbait. So that was fun, kind of hooking up with those people through the high mountain passes. And so this was about the point where, like I said, I didn't quite have enough food in my bag, so I was starting to get hungry, and food cravings really, really started to hit me, and I was craving spaghetti so bad. Like my journal was like, I want spaghetti. I don't know what it was. I really wanted spaghetti. So those were kind of things I was thinking while I was walking. And so the near hut, I wrote this particular day because it was a really interesting day for me. I was just kind of having a rough day. Like I said, I think just low on energy. And I got to this one place around noon, and there was a lake, and I just kind of said, okay, I need to stop, jump in the lake, have some lunch, and carry on my day. Firefox was quite a ways ahead of me. I thought she was way gone for the day. I didn't know if I'd catch her up to her that day or not. But yeah, it was just one of those rough days. And so I hopped into one of those lakes before the pass. Ended up catching up with Firefox, and she's with Chuckles there. Chuckles and his hiking partner Breakheart decided to do a little bit of trout fishing, so that's why I was able to catch up with them. So they were debating about trying some PCT caviar at that point. And I carried on because, like I said, I just really needed to keep moving that day. And I was going to camp somewhere down behind those bulk of trees there, and so I found a spot. And Firefox decided to go off to a place called Muir Trail Ranch, and it's just this little possible resupply point along the trail. So she went down, and I decided not to because I didn't want to add the extra miles to the day. We really didn't know if that place was very hiker friendly because there's some misleading reports about whether they accepted hikers or not. So she ended up catching up to me later on in the evening. I was running up to my tent, and she's like, "Scorpia, you are not going to believe this place. You're not going to believe what I found down there." And I'm like, "Oh, what?" Like, I really just want to go to sleep, and this is not a good time. She's like, I got you spaghetti. So there are these things called hiker boxes where people just discard food or their gear, you know, just stuff that they don't want to carry anymore. And they're all throughout the trail in towns at this particular resupply point. And it was just like one of those, you know, mountain house or backcountry pantry. I don't really know what brand it was, but just a standard freeze-dried spaghetti. But I had it for breakfast the next morning. It was like the best thing ever. It really, really buoyed my spirits the next morning. That was really wonderful. And one of the huge benefits of being able to hook up with other people on the trail, even though you are a solo hiker, is having that support. So again, carrying on through the high Sierras, I finally make it to Vermilion Valley Resort. Vermilion Valley Resort is at the far end of a man-made lake. You can see the lake in the background. It's a dam lake. Typically that lake comes up to that greenish, like right behind that orange bucket. So we had to walk about a mile and a half out to go catch the boat that comes across to pick up hikers. And but we had envisioned setting up our tents on the beach and having a little fun girls' beach party afternoon. But it didn't quite work out that way because, like I said, we had to walk so far out. And the beach itself was just really just this wide exposed thing, and you really couldn't swim because it wasn't really deep enough to actually swim or anything like that. So that's us trying to have some fun while we wait for the boat to come back and pick us up. So I spent a couple days at VVR getting my next resupply, and then carrying on to Mammoth, and again just a couple spots along the trail. And so Mammoth to Sonora Pass, you know, again much the same, just hiking through the day and hooking up with people during the afternoons and on breaks. It's Hufflepuff and Phil there. Loving that we have water all the time, still not taking that for granted after going through the desert and having those huge water carries. Just loving this. Probably averaging around 18 miles a day at this point in the Sierras. I was doing probably around 22 in Southern California, dropped down a little bit for the Sierras, and then pumped it back up again. And, sorry, one more, Jenna. So this is me on top of Sonora Pass. And Sonora Pass was a really special day for me because this was the day that Adam was coming down. So he flew down into, I forget where he flew down into, but then we went over to South Lake Tahoe for a few nights. So yeah, it was really great seeing him after 2-ish odd months and being whisked away to that. He said he was not too impressed with my smell. Yeah, I tried to jump in lakes and rivers, but it doesn't quite cut it sometimes. And people always ask me, what are your highlights of the trip? What was your favorite part, your favorite section, all that kind of stuff. And again, really hard to answer that question, and it really honestly wasn't the scenery. You know, the high Sierras, of course, were stunning, but at the end of the day, you know, the mountain range is a mountain, same as the next lake, beautiful, gorgeous, wonderful. But like I said at the beginning, it really came down to the people. And so this particular day, mile point 1147, the trail wasn't anything stunning, but it just so happened that a woman named Spirit Bear was in the area, and Spirit Bear is friends with Firefox from back on the Appalachian Trail. And so she decided, she got in touch with Firefox and said, I'm going to meet you partway in on the trail. And we were just sort of in a group of people at that point, and ended up having a huge little posse camped in this little shrubbery of trees up there, all kind of huddled in, because there's a lot of exposure. And so we had Patches, Spirit Bear, Hufflepuff, Firefox, Sweet Moon Pie, Coyote, and Phil that night kind of in that area. And that's just us having. So, like I said, nothing particularly, you know, outrageous happened that night. It was just really cool to be around everybody. For some reason, right around Sierra City, we had this crazy amount of trail magic. These three gentlemen were just 3 guys that were out camping, found out they were near the PCT, brought in all their extra food, and just cooked up grilled cheese sandwiches for us as we walked by. I can see here. Yeah, it was pretty fantastic. And then heading right into Sierra City, we had somebody else cooking hot dogs for us. And that is Spirit Bear's band, so she was kind of hanging out with us, like I said. And so we did something called slack packing, which is simply being able to empty out most of the stuff in your pack. And instead of carrying everything, you just carry a little bit of water and some food. And we had a really big ascent coming out of Sierra City. And so yeah, it was really great. Spirit Bear just kind of met us at one of the trailheads on the other side of that climb and grabbed the rest of my stuff, carried on, so that was great. And then just one more photo here, Sweet Moon Pie and Coyote. they became really good friends as well. We got to hike a lot. I got to hike a lot with them. But this, again, has a little special memory in my place because that was the evening. Dun dun dun. Next slide. I woke up at 2 or 3 a.m. and I needed to get out of my tent right away. And that was the rest of my evening, or that night. So I'm pretty sure I contracted giardia. My choices really were I had about an 18-mile hike to the next road to hook up with Spirit Bear to take me into a little town called Quincy, where I ended up spending a couple nights hoping to get rid of whatever said bug was. I wasn't sure it was giardia at the time. It seemed to pass through me pretty quickly, so I was kind of thinking, you know, you're in the backcountry, not really washing your hands, you have questionable meat, questionable cheese in your pack all the time. So at first I was just kind of hoping it was some kind of little bug like that. But it turned out not to be. And so I'm guessing I picked it up somewhere after Adam dropped me off around mile 1100. Because it usually takes about 1 to 2 weeks to show up, and this Aloha Lakes area is a really, really popular spot for weekend hikers, so when you have a greater number of people, you have a greater chance. But I don't really know for sure. I don't even really want to blame it too much on water filtration and my issues there, because I started out with using a MSR Sweetwater standard pump. Just miscalculated the cartridge and ended up having to switch to drops partway through, and so I was using Aquamira drops. The problem though with almost any kind of waterborne parasite is that a single drop will infect you. So every time I jumped into a lake or a river, it gets on your mouth. Every time I filled up my water bottle and I didn't properly wipe it or dry it, I could have got it from that. So I don't know for sure where I contracted it. These are just sort of my guesses. So yeah, like I said, I was in Quincy for a couple days. Thought it had run its course, whatever it was, but as it would be, it did not run its course. So I kept hiking, but that was a really bad 18 miles to get into town. So Belden to Chester, sort of the next little chunk. Belden town was really weird. It is a rave town. And again, one of those places that I don't know for sure if it's an incorporated community or if it's just some person owns land. But they are known for their raves. And so we happened to be coming down this huge, huge descent going into that valley, at which point we also had to come out of that valley. And you're walking through and you're seeing a little bit of garbage and a little bit more, and all of a sudden there's big cases of 2-4s, and then there's rubber dinghies. And we realized, oh, it's the rave town. So we missed the rave by about 1 day. It just happened that night before. So we were walking through and there was a lot of zoned out people as we were walking through the town, this area. But yeah, so it was interesting. I also had a chance in Belden. We stayed with the trail angels called the Brattons. There are some people on the trail that host hikers. They'll let you sleep in their house, or in this case, the Brattons had actually built an entire section onto their house to house hikers. So we stayed with them, and it was really, really hot that day, so I stayed the night and got a chance to see some river otters, which I've never seen before. So there's some river otters in the river that runs through it, and they were diving and feeding, so that was pretty cool. Lassen National Forest there is just a really neat place, and I'd recommend if you're ever in the area to see Mount Lassen. It's an old volcano, and it's pretty fascinating. But the big thing is Chester and the PCT midpoint. At this point, I was still pretty sure I was hiking the whole trail. So to me, this was just represented the halfway point of the full trail. So you know, you walk up to the PCT midpoint, you're like, yes, I've done 1,300 miles. And I'm still in California. Yeah, but it was obviously a huge accomplishment to get there. Had a chance to weigh myself. I hadn't done that in quite some time. A little bit shocking how much weight loss you have. And especially now considering when I look back at my illness, why I had such a drastic weight loss. So, carrying on from the midpoint. So like I said, I was still a little bit sick. Actually, hold on, I'll carry on. So around 1400. And the wild bird cache. So again, just a different version of Trail Angels and Trail Magic. These people set up this picnic table. There was actually a solar shower available at this particular spot. There's a bunch of like dirt roads and forest roads around there, so they would just drive in to resupply. And this was the starting off of the Hat Creek Rim, if you're familiar with that at all. And that is my first view of Mount Shasta. So it was shortly after this that I kind of had a meltdown. I just, and again, looking back, I just chalk it up to being physically drained, and you know, not being able to eat very much really has that impact on you. And you know, it's harder to keep your mental and emotional state intact when your body is just breaking down on you. You have self-service. And basically called him bawling. I was in tears. I'm like, I feel awful. I can't carry on. Like, what do I do? And he's like, well, you have to go through California. I mean, you have to, otherwise you really regret it at that point. And so of course he was right, but still, you know, I was ready to throw my pack off the cliff that I was standing on. And, but that's okay. So I walked for a little bit, and I came around a corner, and I saw little Bambi. So there was two of them, and how can you be mad and upset when you see two little deer like frolicking down the trail? And so I'm like, oh, that's right, I'm fine. So still really, like I said, pretty low on energy. I wrote a number of times in my journals that, you know, I just feel like I'm not building up to what most people should be up to at this point. Like looking back, it's really understandable. So right around the mile 1600 mark, the smoke really hit hard. We all experienced some smoke this summer. The Trinity Alps Wilderness, another section that I would love to go back to see. For the most part, it was really, really smoky and hazy, and you couldn't see too much. Every now and then we get this clearing, you could tell that there's this gorgeous vistas in there. And so I'd love to go back and see the Trinity Alps when it's not fire season. And lots of talks about fire closures starting to get in the area. Southern Oregon and Northern California, they're worrying about the fire closures. And heading into Sand Valley, it is the last town in California, on the PCT I should say. A little bit of a roadblock, not too bad, and I'm with Patches and Firefox. The famed blackberry bush, of which we, actually the whole road is pretty much lined with blackberry bushes, so we had a great time there. Some lovely markers. Again, I was still pretty sure I was hiking onto Canada at this point. And my last night in California. A little cheers to Oregon and what's to come. So mile point 1700. And I'll just get you to hold off here for a few minutes, Jeff. So yeah, entering into Oregon, it was pretty incredible and really, really great feeling to finally get through California. I look back now and I look at how little, the few photos that I did take, and you know, things start to make a little bit more sense now when you look back, but I didn't have the huge celebration that I thought I was going to have, and I didn't actually take very many photos in the last few hundred miles, and I just realized now I was sick. I was really sick, I was really tired. My body was really not doing well at all. I'd lost a ton of weight at this point. My legs, most people all have like the T-Rex nothing arms while they're hiking, but their lower bodies are really strong. They've got these incredible calf muscles, and I was just stick thin legs, and so I kind of feel like my body was starting to eat its own muscle because I wasn't getting the calories that I needed. So I got into Ashland and had a chance to look at myself in the mirror for the first time since Vermilion Resort. Terrified of myself. I was very skeletal. It was really, really bad. I probably put about 40 pounds back on myself since I've been home. It was not healthy. And I also realized that I was hiking and I was stumbling a lot more than I normally did and starting, getting dizzy and that type of thing. So it was just, I unfortunately had to make the call to Adam and say I have to come home, and it was really, really difficult, and to this day I question and I struggle with that decision. But, one more photo. Yeah. My dog was happy to see me. Yeah, so it's, I feel like, I know it's a very anticlimactic end to this little presentation, but that's sort of what happened, is I got into Ashland, and I was there for 2 nights, and then I was home in Rossland. They had a flight right to Spokane, and I was home. It was a really quick decision, but a really, really, really heartbreaking and difficult one to make. And especially when a couple months later, all my friends were finishing. Really happy for everyone to have finished, of course, but it was, it was really hard. Like I said, I do still struggle with that decision because it's really easy for me to stand up here now, feeling healthy, and say, oh, I could have hiked for 2 more months. Like medically, I probably wouldn't have done horrible damage to myself. I might have tripped and knocked myself out, which wouldn't have been good, but for the most part, I wasn't going to die of starvation or anything of that nature. But like I said, it was really hard at that point. So that's, like I said, the end of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. Like I said, if you guys are looking at someone looking at doing this trail or a portion of this trail, I'm happy to talk to you perhaps on the side if you need some ideas. And that's it.
The names, everyone's crazy names.
Yes.
Well, those are real names. Or they're trail names.
They were trail
They're all
names. Oh, I
trail
guess she snuck in a little bit.
And you can't get on the trail without getting a trail name, except Phil, he's like, no way.
Well, so Phil spells his name P-H-I-L, but then, because he really didn't want a trail name, but his wife, or his partner really wanted him to have a trail name, he changed his name to Phil with an F and 2 L's. So you do have to accept the trail names, and people try different names, and sometimes it works, or sometimes they change it over the course of the trail as some other things. One gentleman I know, his name was Coyote when I met him, and later on he became Bear Bait because he found so many bears when he got into Washington. So, but I know him as Coyote kind of thing. So yes, the trail names do change, and you do have to accept it.
It's a thing, I didn't know that.
It is a total thing,
That's
on
awesome.
all the long distance trails, yeah.
And you don't pick your own, you pick your own name.
No, I mean, you're given it, it's like a nickname. You
Yeah.
usually don't pick your own nickname. Some
Okay.
people pick their own nicknames, of course, but we make fun of those people, right?
Okay.
So there should be a story behind those. So yeah, so trail names
Yeah.
typically get given to you, and then you choose to accept it and introduce yourself. So I became known as Scorpion. I was given that name, and I was actually given the name Scorpion Queen. But I didn't like how long that was, so I talked to a couple people, and we're like, let's do Scorpia. And so I became, and that's how I introduced myself. I ceased to be Tara. Like I said, after 4 days, I was Scorpia, and that's how I signed registers and referred to myself.
Awesome.
Were there any kids on the trail?
Yes, yeah, there were a couple families, some of them doing the whole trail, some of them doing sections of it. I don't think I saw like any little ones. What are you thinking, Dimitri?
No, yeah.
But they're, like
really fast by the time we finish.
Yeah, exactly. There was definitely a couple families I saw, with like 12-year-olds, that type of thing. I know there was a couple families out there with, I think, like a 7-year-old, and there is a person, and I don't know a ton about this family, but their kid's name is Buddy Backpacker, and he's like 5. And he's one of the youngest to hike. He's already hiked the Appalachian Trail, I believe it is, and so he was working on completing the Pacific Crest Trail.
Wow.
So I never met them or anything, but yeah, so there are definitely some young ones out there.
Cool.
Was this your first true long distance, or had you done others before?
Yeah, long distance is really debatable. I mean, who defines what a long distance trail is? The Long Distance Trail Hiking Association of America, I think is what it's called, I think defines it as over 200 miles. So in that case, Vicki and I did the Canal Trail last year, which was 222 miles. So technically I did that, but 200 miles on the Canal Trail was entirely different than 1,700 miles on this trail. So I did cycle across Canada. Adam and I cycled across Canada in 2010, which did give me some nice background. And there were people of all different levels on this trail. Like I said, there was AT vets and whatnot, and there's also people who have never backpacked in their life.
Really?
Yeah.
How did they cope?
It's one thing you learned, you just have to learn and accept really quickly, is you cannot guess who's going to finish and who's not going to finish.
Yeah.
I never would have guessed I would have got off the trail. And there are some beginners out there, and some of them just fell in love with it and did it. Others did not.
Did you run into any cougars or bears or?
Yeah, I did not. Although, like I said, a couple of my night hikes, I wasn't too sure.
Yeah.
People say that they saw some mountain lions in the evening, and I don't doubt that people think they saw some mountain lions in the evening, which is sometimes enough. I mean, mountain lions are typically pretty reclusive, there's also coyotes down there, and you get a young deer, and that's kind of like the same height. So people think they saw cougars. I'm not convinced. The number of people that told me they saw cougars actually saw cougars.
Were people hiking in the opposite direction?
Yes, so I was going what's called a NOVO, which is northbound, and then there's SOVOs, which is southbound. So they start at Manning Park, although you can't legally start southbound from Manning Park. You have to come in from the U.S. because there's no border crossing there, right? So you have to come in from the U.S. and then start down. And they typically start around mid-July. So right around, like yeah, Northern California-ish, like after the High Sierras, we started running into some people. That was kind of fun, running into those people.
From the equipment and stuff that you set out with,
Yeah.
was there stuff that you ditched along the way, or stuff that you thought you couldn't live without, which you actually could live without?
Yeah, you know, I credit the trail last summer learning a ton about what I needed and didn't need. And so I feel like I had most of my gear pretty dialed. The big thing being the whisper light. I switched to the canister stove. And so still love the whisper light, but the size of it, you know, plus fuel canisters, it's just the efficiency isn't there for one person. And I know it might sound ridiculous to anyone who's backpacked with their whisper light, that it became such a pain for me to set it up and pump it up and light it and then unhook it and put it. It sounds ridiculous because, you know, I've used it for weekend and week-long trips before. But after, you know, a month and a half of doing that night, and watching my friends just with the lighter with the canister, I broke down and I went with the canister stove. And that was the biggest change I made. And the other thing, which I don't have an answer to, would be the filtration. I'm not too sure. Because I contracted Giardia, I don't really know what type of filtration system I would use going forward. Like I said, I think I misused my pump with the cartridge, so I don't want to blame that. The drops are so light and so easy to use, but they're not super great for long-term use, so the water filtration would be one thing I'd still have to look into about what kind of gear swaps I would make. And I think the other big gear thing that I chose differently, because I'm not an ultralight hiker, there's a lot of ultralighters out there that go without their tent or their puffy jackets or first aid kits and all that kind of stuff, and that's not my style. Were my boots. A lot of people wore running shoes, but you could totally wear running shoes this whole trail. I chose to wear my hiking boots just mostly because I knew them and they were comfortable and they fit me, and I wasn't going to get blisters from them, but you could technically wear your running shoes the whole way. Yeah.
What happened to your MSR?
My pump?
Yeah.
So the first piece was that I just miscalculated the liters that I needed to change out the filter.
Yeah.
And so because of that, it started not working. And I put 2 and 2 together a little bit too late. And so I thought at first it was the little pre-filter at the bottom that just takes out the gunk.
Yeah.
So I actually ended up taking that off. And then the stone got sucked up into it, and the filter is sort of dead right now. So I can't take it apart. But I'm not against that filter by any stretch.
Yeah.
I just, it's user error on miscalculating it, causing some problems later on down the road. And there's a lot of gravity filters out there, the ones where you hang the bag. And so I'd consider one of those for sure. A lot of people, I think there's some really neat benefits to that one. Because you can just like hang it and go to set up your tent and come back and you've got water.